ladies and gentlemen. It's an honor for me to open this conference with some remarks on freedom and the dangers that we face today. So let me start with a basic question, rather simple-minded. Do we have more freedom or less freedom today than, shall we say, 30 or 40 years ago? I mean, who remembers more or less vividly Europe 3 or 4 decades ago will answer, no doubt, that we have less freedom today. Law has become more intrusive, more restrictive, even more repressive, and life generally in the entire Western world has become more and more politicized and ideologized. By telling a joke, not only in public but in private, you may lose your job, or you may be in trouble, and serious trouble. In fact, it's difficult to find a place where you will be free from political ideological constraints. Certainly it is not academia, not art, less and less family, and certainly not the relation between a man and a woman. And these new constraints are being imposed not only by governments, but also by corporations, by international institutions, media, schools. So no wonder that the number of sins you may commit has dramatically increased. The number of sins, or perhaps what George Orwell called thought crimes. There were many thought crimes you could have committed under the communist regime, but the surprising thing is that in our times, in the Western world, this number has increased. Practically, it's endless. Just to name a few, you may be accused of misogyny, sexism, racism, homophobia, transphobia, Islamophobia, Eurocentrism, phallocentrism, logocentrism, ageism, binarism, populism, anti-Semitism, nationalism, xenophobia, hate speech, Euroscepticism, and many, many others. And the more sins, the more numerous must be thought police or language police. And the more numerous the informers who will denounce you. And the more temptation, the bigger the temptation for the careerist who by denouncing you will seek a way of career making. Also, what is characteristic of our times is there is no alternative approach. And there is no alternative to increasing number of things or regulations or ideas. Abortion, there is no alternative to abortion as human right, we are told. No alternative to gender ideology, or green ideology, or climate thing, or colonialism, or slavery. I mean, so many subjects, they have been settled once and for all. There is no alternative. There is one version, orthodox version, that has to be accepted, and whoever tries to undermine it is a troublemaker and should be rightfully denounced. But perhaps the strangest thing of all is that we do not see a universal rebellion against this in what was once called the free world. Right? The impression is, and I think the impression is justified, that quite a lot of people, I would say the majority and the major institutions, seem to accept it. Of course, there is a counter reaction to it. This conference and the institution behind the new direction is one of the many examples. And it's not that we who are deeply dissatisfied with the current situation, we are doing our best to resist and to present an alternative and to change people's minds. But as I was saying yesterday during our conversation, in the evening, we are winning the battles, but we seem to be losing the war, especially when you look at the change of the legal systems and the political structure. So the intimidation and indoctrination turned out to be quite effective. And there are several vehicles which the enemies of freedom use today. There are too many of them to be discussed. I will mention just one. This is the concept of discrimination. This has become a kind of sacred concept, and all programs, political strategies, institutions which put the concept of discrimination as the highest value are immediately absolved of all the sins that they might commit. So everybody is fighting against discrimination. This fight against discrimination is, as we see it today, is a sort of marriage between liberalism and socialism. This concept of discrimination emerged from the mixture of liberal and socialist ideas. I remember a joke, a very popular Jewish joke we like to tell our friends under the communist system. Somebody comes to a rabbi and asks him whether there would be war. And the rabbi says, no, there won't be any war, but there will be such a struggle for peace that no stone will be left unturned. So we can somehow translate it into today's discourse and say to the question whether we will lose freedom. No, we will not lose freedom, but there will be such a struggle for non-discrimination that nobody will dare to utter a word. So this is a rather depressing picture, but the answer that the question that we have to ask now to at least to get rid of this pessimism of my preliminary remarks is what should be done? An old Vladimir Ilyich Lenin's question, right? What's to be done? What's to be done? Well, I will just mention three things. The first thing is language. We are surrounded and we are using the language that lies. It's a mendacious language. The words which used to be nice and friendly and encouraging, such as pluralism, tolerance, diversity, turned into most sinister concepts. They acquired sinister meanings. They are sticks, rather like sticks to be the enemies. I noticed a long time ago when my country, Poland, liberated herself from communism, I noticed this change of language. I remember quite vividly my reaction to the concept of tolerance, and I noticed that whoever incessantly was talking about tolerance, I knew that I should be running for life, because this is a very dangerous person. The person who was about to say, well, I am tolerant, you are not, so you shut up. And And you can see the inversion of meanings. It's not just one word. Pluralism means monopoly, right? Diversity means conformity. Tolerance is discrimination. Democracy means a de facto one-party rule. Liberal democracy, this is also a mendacious concept. If liberal democracy means liberals standing for freedom and democracy for multi-party rule, that does not correspond to reality. My country is being called authoritarian, right? Poland has allegedly an authoritarian regime or illiberal democracy. I'd rather live under illiberal democracy when we have much more freedom in my country than in other West European countries that they have manifestly less freedom, and democracy is extremely selective, shall we say. So we have to debunk this mendacity. If we use this language, right, if we play the game according to these linguistic rules, we will lose. This language, the mendacity of this language has to be revealed and has to be debunked. The second theme I want to address that might change the situation is politics. Now, the problem in politics in the Western world and in Europe in particular is that the political parties that historically were defending freedom, were presenting an alternative to the leftist ideology, capitulated. If you look at German Christian democracy, whether CDU or CSU, or if you look at People's Party, right, in Spain, or that sort of parties which still are quite powerful, and most of them are members of the European People's Party, you can see that they already capitulated. I mean, their agenda is the agenda of the left. They are the parties of power. They want to have power. They are quite influential. But as far as their agenda is concerned, they bought all this leftist stuff and do not really dare to present an alternative. So practically in Europe now we have two conservative governments in Eastern Europe, in Poland and Hungary, and in Western Europe we have a problem. Now, there are new conservative parties that are clearly gaining power. There was a good news in Sweden. Recently, Swedish Democrats were quite successful at the elections. And it's very likely that our allies and friends from Italy, Fratelli d'Italia, will be also successful in the coming elections in Italy. Next year we have elections in Spain, I think, and again our allies, Vox, will have a chance. But the question is whether their victory at the polls would translate itself into a political and ideological alternative, or whether they will not wind up as CDU, CSU, and all these EPP parties. So we have to wait and see, but that is of crucial importance. What will be the political strategy and what will be the political goals of these parties? Whether they will defy the ruling orthodoxy, they will defy the mainstream and go against it and make a difference, or whether they will be swallowed by the mainstream. And well, as I said, we'll see. It has just occurred to me, going back to the first point, I mean, about the language. I forgot to mention one concept that is probably the most mendacious concept today, the most distorted and corrupted you can think of, is the word critical or criticism. If you are critical today, it means that you unconditionally and enthusiastically surrender to the ruling orthodoxy. That's the highest form of criticism now today. So that was language, that was politics, and now the third theme I would like to address is perhaps more philosophical, but I think it's equally important and probably even more important. That is anthropology. Freedom very much depends on free people. Not only free peoples, but free people. Free man, as Aristotle defined him, was a sovereign man. That is, having a very strong personality and being aware of himself, of the goals, and of the objective hierarchy of goals. Because when you are conditioned, you are a victim of the circumstances. You are shaped by the external pressure. Even if you think you are free, you are not. Because you are conditioned to the extent that your decisions are not your own decision. You imitate. Especially at the age of globalism. We see how imitation, how mimicry spreads around. Whenever you go, you see the same things. You perhaps meet the same kind of stereotypes, images, ways of behavior. Just a few small example. I cannot resist giving this example. Whenever you go any hotel in the world, or to a restaurant, have breakfast or lunch, you are exposed to this odious, loud, lousy music. It happened in Tallinn, and this morning when I came to the Defending Freedom conference, what did I hear? Odious, loud, lousy music. I hope it's the last time, and the big man in the new direction will eliminate this practice forever. So let me go back to this idea of Aristotelian human nature, according to Aristotle. So you have to be strong. That is, you have to be equipped with the ideas, virtues, insights, moral habits that make you immune against all this nonsense, that you will be able to sort of stand apart and look at the world, not being only inside, right, and repeating what everybody says, but being critical in the original sense of the word. That is, as I said, you can step outside, so to speak, and look at the world from an outside perspective. And in order to do it, you have to have an intellectual and moral equipment, so to speak. And where this equipment can come from, where all these things, these ideas, these concepts, arguments, where can they come from? especially that in today's world, this universal global conformity. Well, usually they came from education, right? Family, tradition, religion, and I think these are good sources, and they still retain their validity. I know it's difficult today because, for instance, Christianity has been, unfortunately, has been accommodating itself to the modern idiom, and you see it in the Catholic Church, which for centuries was resistant to these temptations. You can see it now. I'm saying it to my regret, but still Christianity is a powerful force from which you can take inspiration and not be fooled by the fake anthropology that is being pumped into our brains today. Also, as I say, history and patriotism and of classical education. So I think being well prepared to stand up against all the threats of today's world, you have to take inspiration from outside this world. You have to seek the alternative to the current fads and cliches, which present themselves as the only true, correct, and inevitable ideas, where they are not inevitable. So with this in mind, I wish you good luck.